one language, one culture, one system creates strength. Everyone believes this. But history's greatest intellectual explosions happened in multilingual, multi-religious ecosystems. What if homogeneity signals weakness, not power? Modern institutions worship standardization. Same curriculum, same tests, same career paths. China enforces Mandarin across 1.4 billion people. France built national identity on linguistic uniformity. Corporations obsess over culture fit. Does unified culture really drive innovation? Or does it guarantee stagnation? The conventional wisdom sounds logical. Homogeneous groups communicate easily. Control becomes simple. Conflict stays minimal. Efficiency improves when everyone thinks alike. But this logic collapses when we examine actual history. The most transformative intellectual periods never happened in monocultures. They happened at collision zones where different systems crashed together. Islamic civilization's golden age proves this pattern with mathematical precision. Arabic became the scholarly language across 3 continents. But Persian, Turkish, Hebrew, and Syriac flourished simultaneously. Jewish philosophers wrote in Arabic within Muslim lands. Christian translators converted Greek texts for Muslim patrons. Zoroastrian astronomers calculated celestial movements in Abbasid courts. This wasn't chaos. It was structured diversity operating as intellectual arbitrage. This pattern appears everywhere once you recognize it. If you want to understand why some civilizations innovate while others stagnate, subscribe to Professor Jiang Explained. The difference isn't resources or geography. It's how systems handle cognitive diversity. Consider what happened in 9th century Baghdad. The Abbasid caliphs established Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. Scholars from different backgrounds gathered to translate Greek philosophy and Indian mathematics. Hunayn ibn Ishaq, an Nestorian Christian, translated 116 works by Galen. Masha'Allah, a Jewish astronomer, founded Abbasid astrology. Persian families transmitted astronomical text from Pahlavi to Arabic. Muslim scholars coordinated, synthesized, and critiqued everything. But here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't simple tolerance or multicultural celebration. It was systematic exploitation of cognitive arbitrage. Different languages encode different conceptual frameworks. Arabic lacked certain philosophical terms that existed in Greek. Persian astronomy contained insights absent from Indian systems. Hebrew Talmudic reasoning influenced Islamic jurisprudence methodology. Each linguistic tradition became a perspective multiplier. Think about what this means structurally. When you translate Aristotle from Greek to Arabic, you don't just transfer words. You force concepts through a different grammatical and philosophical framework. That friction generates new questions. Arabic syntax made certain Greek arguments seem incomplete. Persian metaphysics challenged Arabic theological assumptions. The translation process itself became innovation. The system worked because diversity operated within shared structure. Islamic law provided common rules for commercial and civic life. The dhimmi system allowed Jewish and Christian communities internal autonomy. But trade, scholarship, and urban existence required shared standards. Everyone played the same game, but they brought different strategies, different tools, different mental models. Consider the alternative. Imagine Baghdad enforcing linguistic uniformity. Only Arabic permitted, only Muslim scholars allowed. Would that have produced the mathematical, medical, and philosophical breakthroughs? History suggests absolutely not. Homogeneous systems generate echo chambers. Ideas circulate without challenge. Assumptions go unexamined. Innovation stalls. But perhaps the most sophisticated aspect was controlled conflict. For different Islamic legal schools competed openly. Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali methodologies produced different rulings. Theological debates between Ash'arites and Mu'tazilites grew intense. But conflict stayed channeled within structured argumentation. The system didn't eliminate disagreement. It weaponized disagreement as epistemological tool. This explains something curious about how innovation actually happens. Homogeneous groups reach consensus quickly, but rarely generate breakthroughs. Diverse groups argue longer, but produce novel solutions. The friction isn't bug, it's feature. Different perspectives colliding create cognitive sparks, but only when structure prevents collision from becoming chaos. The Islamic intellectual ecosystem understood this implicitly. Scholars traveled across regions to study with masters. A Hadith scholar in Bokhara corresponded with jurists in Cairo. Knowledge wasn't hoarded locally. It circulated globally through networks spanning West Africa to Central Asia. This mobility created what we might call distributed epistemology. No single center controlled all knowledge. Power stayed dispersed across linguistic and geographic zones. Compare this with modern monocultures. China's Mandarin enforcement creates communication efficiency. but it eliminates linguistic diversity that once generated regional innovation. Corporate culture fit produces cohesive teams, but it filters out perspectives that challenge groupthink. Standardized education ensures baseline competency, but it crushes cognitive variation that drives breakthroughs. The system becomes even more revealing when we examine why it collapsed. By the 11th and 12th centuries, political pressure increased. Philosophical inquiry became marginalized after certain theological shifts. The Mongol invasions destroyed Baghdad and shattered the multi-centered structure. The Ottoman centralization enforced Turkish linguistic dominance. Diversity decreased. Homogeneity increased. And intellectual dynamism died. This creates what we might call the monoculture death spiral. Standardization reduces variation. Reduced variation eliminates perspective diversity. Lost diversity means fewer challenges to assumptions. Unchallenged assumptions calcify into dogma. Dogma prevents adaptation. And inability to adapt guarantees decline. Now consider the modern comparison. Silicon Valley operates as cognitive ecosystem. Over 50% of founders were born outside America. Multiple languages spoken. Different cultural frameworks colliding constantly. Does this create inefficiency? Absolutely. Does it generate breakthrough innovation? The patent data confirms overwhelmingly yes. Meanwhile, China optimizes for standardization. Mandarin enforced. Political conformity required. Ethnic minorities assimilated. Does this enable rapid execution? Absolutely. Does it produce fundamental innovation? The evidence suggests much less frequently. China excels at application. America dominates discovery. The difference maps precisely to diversity versus homogeneity. But there's something even more insidious about how monocultures maintain themselves. They convince populations that uniformity equals progress. Everyone reads same books. Everyone takes same tests. Everyone follows same career paths. This appears efficient, but it systematically eliminates the edge collision zones where innovation happens. Think about the implications. The greatest mathematical breakthroughs came from Islamic scholars working across Arabic, Persian, and Greek frameworks. The Renaissance emerged when Europe reconnected with Islamic preserved Greek texts. Modern computing arose from diverse teams mixing physics, mathematics, and engineering. Innovation consistently happens at intersections, never in isolated centers. The tragedy is how this pattern appears to institutions today. Universities enforce ideological conformity while celebrating superficial diversity. Corporations hire for culture fit while claiming to value different perspectives. Nations pursue linguistic uniformity while wondering why innovation declines. They've confused diversity's appearance with its function. And perhaps most remarkably, defenders of diversity typically reject structure. Defenders of structure typically suppress diversity. But Islamic Golden Age did both simultaneously. Diversity flourished within shared legal and civic frameworks. And we still haven't replicated that formula. The monoculture trap works because it promises control. Standardized systems are predictable. Homogeneous groups are manageable. Uniform cultures are stable. But stability optimized eliminates the variation required for adaptation. And organisms that cannot adapt eventually die. Consider how different the conversation would be if institutions understood actual history. Instead of debating whether diversity helps, we'd ask how to structure diversity productively. Instead of choosing between homogeneity and chaos, we'd examine frameworks that channel difference toward innovation. Instead of assuming uniformity drives progress, we'd recognize that cognitive monocultures guarantee stagnation. The system also exploits what psychologists call in-group preference. People naturally trust those who think like them. This makes homogeneous teams feel comfortable. But comfort is the enemy of breakthrough thinking. Innovation requires cognitive discomfort. Different frameworks challenging your assumptions. Alternative perspectives exposing your blind spots. Islamic civilization understood this at systemic level. The four legal schools disagreed on methodology, but accepted each other's legitimacy. Theological debates grew heated, but stayed within bounds. Translation work required grappling with foreign conceptual frameworks. The entire system was designed to maintain productive tension between unity and diversity. But there's yet another dimension that makes monocultures particularly effective at maintaining power. They create what we might call epistemological closure. When everyone speaks the same language literally and figuratively, alternative framings become invisible. You cannot think thoughts your language doesn't encode. You cannot question assumptions your culture treats as natural law. This explains why empires enforce linguistic uniformity. It's not just about communication efficiency. It's about cognitive control. When you eliminate linguistic diversity, you eliminate conceptual diversity. When you eliminate conceptual diversity, you eliminate the tools needed to imagine alternatives. The dominated cannot revolt if they lack language to articulate their domination. Islamic golden age avoided this trap through institutional design. The mosque wasn't just prayer space. It was learning center. The madrasa formalized education centuries before European universities. The WAC system provided decentralized funding for scholarship. These institutions protected intellectual activity from political pressure. They created space where diverse perspectives could survive and interact. Consider the WAC system specifically. Wealthy individuals endowed property to support schools, hospitals, and libraries. This meant education didn't depend solely on rulers' whims. Civil society funded knowledge production. When one region faced political repression, scholarship migrated to more tolerant areas. The multi-centered structure provided redundancy that monocultures lack. Now think about modern knowledge production. Universities depend on government and corporate funding. Both sources impose ideological constraints. Researchers self-censor to maintain funding. Controversial perspectives get filtered out. The system produces consensus not through intellectual merit, but through economic pressure. We've created epistemological monoculture while claiming to value academic freedom. The Islamic model suggests alternative architecture, distributed funding sources, multiple centers of authority, competing schools of thought with institutional backing. No single orthodoxy controlling knowledge production. This isn't romantic nostalgia. It's structural analysis of what actually enables sustained intellectual vitality. But intellectual revolutions are fragile. They require continuous renewal of diversity. When debate narrows, when orthodoxy hardens, when institutions prioritize conformity, decline follows. This isn't unique to Islamic civilization. Rome fell this way. China cycled through innovation and stagnation this way. Europe nearly destroyed itself this way. The lesson transcends any single civilization. Homogeneity feels safe. Diversity feels threatening. But history proves homogeneous systems become brittle. They optimize for current conditions. They cannot adapt to changed conditions. And changed conditions are the only certainty. Modern institutions face this exact challenge. Technology changes rapidly. Problems grow more complex. Yet organizations optimize for cultural fit and standardized thinking. They're building precisely the wrong architecture for an uncertain world. The cruel irony is that diversity advocates often make the same mistake. They celebrate surface differences while enforcing ideological conformity. Different skin colors, but identical worldviews. This isn't cognitive diversity. It's aesthetic diversity masking epistemological monoculture. True cognitive diversity requires protecting genuinely different frameworks. Not just different identities holding same beliefs, but different epistemologies, different value structures, different ways of knowing. This creates genuine uncertainty. But that discomfort is precisely what drives innovation. So here's the truth institutions won't tell you. Standardization doesn't create excellence. It creates mediocrity at scale. Uniformity doesn't drive innovation. It guarantees incremental thinking. Monocultures don't build empires. They inherit them and lose them. The real power was never uniformity. It was structured diversity. And the moment we choose comfort over cognitive friction, we choose stagnation over growth. Hit subscribe if you want to understand how ancient civilizations solve problems modern institutions still can't figure out. Share this with someone who thinks culture fit matters more than perspective diversity.